I've never been much of a night owl, but I used to work third shift at a 24-hour gas station. From about 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., it was mostly stoners who would come in to stock up on Doritos. I'd get the occasional truck driver, but otherwise, the place was pretty quiet until around 5 when people were heading to work. On one Tuesday night, I couldn't find a single thing to do, but when I was watching Netflix on my phone, a voice came out of nowhere and startled me half to death, since I thought I had been alone. "Excuse me, ma'am, but could you help me?" Normally, the door sensor would have buzzed and I would try to look productive when customers could see me, but I had no idea anybody was there and I was slacking on the job. Not that the man seemed to mind. He asked for a pack of Kent menthols and said he wanted to put $5 in his bike. My dad used to smoke Kent menthols, but I was almost positive they weren't a thing anymore, and if they were, it's not something we carried. He seemed a little taken aback when I told him that we didn't have his cigarettes in stock. He said, "Sorry to bother you, ma'am. Have a great morning," and left before I could offer him anything else. A week later, the man returned, but this time I saw him walk in, so he didn't catch me by surprise. "Good morning, ma'am. You wouldn't have those Kents by any chance, would you?" Well, I looked at him, trying to figure out if he was joking with me, but he looked serious. I told him our last shipment was back in 1986 and asked if I could get him something else instead. "Tell me this," he said. "How fast can you run away? Because I'm not gonna lie to you. Something awful's gonna happen soon, and now is the time to leave while you still can." It sends a chill down my spine when I think about this conversation, but at the moment, I was so tired that I could barely process the severity of what he said. I followed the guy outside, but he ran out in a hurry, and by the time I was out the door, he had already vanished. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw 2 headlights growing bigger and bigger. I hardly had any time to react before a truck veered off the highway and crashed through the glass windows of the building. The truck obliterated everything in its path, smashing the counter into a million pieces, and the front of the truck had landed right where I would have been standing if I hadn't left. It was hard to explain, but I told police I wasn't by the counter at the time of the accident because somebody warned me to leave and then disappeared after. Because of the warning I had gotten, police suspected this may have been premeditated, and after reviewing the surveillance footage, they accused me of lying about how I knew to leave when I did. When they showed me the video, I couldn't believe my eyes. For 5 minutes, I was at the counter, just talking to myself, and the man who I had spoken to was nowhere on the tape. Somehow, the driver of this truck only suffered minor injuries. He told police that he fell asleep at the wheel, and they left it at that. I applied for the night shift at a small convenience store that looks like a Walmart knockoff, since my town is so tiny that we don't even have Walmart or Target here. My boss is a nice middle-aged lady with a Karen haircut, and at first I thought she would be the worst manager ever because she totally looks like a Karen. And what are you supposed to do when Karen and the manager are the same person? My previous working experience was at an ice cream shop that closed down back in July. They didn't give us any notice before they closed, so I'm lucky that I found this job as fast as I did. But I'd be more lucky if not for this one guy who comes in at midnight several times a week. All he ever buys is a single potato, yet he'll hang around the store for an hour some nights, only to purchase the same one item every time. He doesn't even dress in anything strange either, just some jeans and a Lakers shirt, even though we're not even close to Los Angeles, and no one around here roots for them. My manager told me his wife used to be a supervisor at our store, and that he likes to come here because it reminds him of her, which is why he spends so much time browsing just to buy a potato. 2 weeks ago, when this man came in, I tried making conversation, but when I asked him how his night was going, he just smiled and nodded his head. I told him to have a great night, but he walked out without saying a word. Around 12:30, I was taking the garbage out, and I noticed the guy was just standing outside in the parking lot. It made me nervous he was still there, and I thought about leaving him alone, but I mustered the courage to approach him and ask if there was anything he needed help with. The man smiled and said, "That's okay," so I shrugged it off and went back to work. The whole vibe of this place was weird after that, and it wasn't just because of the one guy. On weeknights, it was my responsibility to make sure the ladies' room was stocked with paper towels. I walked in the bathroom with a few extra rolls in case the dispenser had to be changed, but I noticed one of the stalls was being occupied. Then, out of the blue, I heard knocking coming from in the stall. I said hello, but nobody answered. So I quickly got out of there because at that point I was actually spooked. My boss agreed to switch me to the second shift, but I'd have to work 1 more week of night shifts before the new schedule would take effect. My last night shift was on a Sunday, and of course, the potato man came in. He practically loitered for a whole hour, and I was honestly kind of relieved I wouldn't be seeing him anymore now that I would be working day. This might not have been appropriate, but when he was paying, I asked him the million-dollar question of what he does here at all hours of the night. He didn't answer my question, but he gave me a weird smile, as if the answer to my question was obvious. "My wife talks about you sometimes," he said. "She says she hopes you keep working the night shift, and that it makes her happy how much you love it here." Me and this guy have had many awkward exchanges in the past, but this specific interaction took the word awkward to a whole new level. Not only was he talking about his wife in present tense, but he was under the impression that her and I knew each other, even though she managed the store years before I was hired. I politely smiled and kept my replies as short as possible, not because I was judging him, but I genuinely felt bad for the man and didn't know what to say. Thankfully, another customer had come to the register and rescued me from this conversation. But knowing the guy thinks he's seeing his wife at the store made me feel concerned enough to report it to my manager. For the past week, I've been working day shifts, and it's nowhere near as creepy as working nights. But Emily, who took my place as third shift, mentioned she heard the man talking to someone the other night. She thought she even heard a lady talking back to him, but when she walked by, it was just him, even though she claims that she's almost positive she heard the voice of a woman. Nothing weird has happened yet during the day shift, but then again, there's so many people around that I wouldn't even notice if something did. All I know is if they ask me to work third shift again, I'm saying no.